Hi, my name's Dan, and in this video we're going to go through the process of adding headers and footers to PDF exports within BookStack. Now, this has been a thing that's been requested quite a few times in the past, and it has been attempted to be built into BookStack itself, but it's quite a tricky thing to achieve just because of the level of variation in terms of what people want in their headers and footers, and also the variation in terms of technical abilities within the different export formats that we provide support for. But where we lack a way to do it in a way that's intuitive within the base system, we often provide an alternative way to achieve things using methods of extension and customization, which is what we're going to use in this guide. So we're going to be using the visual theme system to override specific templates that are used in the export system within BookStack to add our header and footer. It should be noted that for the purposes of this guide, we're going to be using a BookStack version 22.07.3. and you'll need to be on at least 22.07.2 or greater because that version added in some template files that makes things a lot easier. Also, if you don't want to sit through this guide, I will put a link in the description to the finished code, and you can also take that at the end. But going through the guide might give you some context about how to tweak things and what specific bits of the code do. So let's jump in. This is my demo BookStack instance. So as I said, it's 22.07.3. Here we're looking at a page that has a whole bunch of different content, and we can do an export of this of PDF. And currently there's no headers and footers in here, and we'll just see this content. So what might be quite a good idea is to set yourself up with a page while testing this out, and make sure you've got multiple pages within your PDF export, because things will appear slightly different between like page 1 and page 2, and you want to make sure those things that do change across pages do work, and you'll see that later on. So that's our BookStack instance. I've also got this open in VS Code. So I've just got VS Code running over SSH to my server, and these are my application files for BookStack. So you might need to do something similar. You could use VS Code, or you could just do things on the terminal using a terminal text editor like Nano or Vim. Just any way that you can edit your files. You'll also need to have something. Alternatively, you could edit files locally, then use like something like SFTP to push those files up onto your server. But I've got it in VS Code, so I can quickly edit things and make this a fairly quick process. So the first thing that we need to do is set up our visual theme system. And there's full documentation within the visual theme system page. And again, I'll put a link to this in the description. But I've also got a video guide on this if needed. But I'll show the basics of this right now. So let's set up our theme. And by going to the themes folder within our BookStack instance, within here we just create a folder with whatever name that we want for our theme. So I'm just going to call this custom. And then to activate that theme, we need to edit our .env config, and we'll add a new item in here, app_theme equals custom. This name here just needs to match the folder name that you set up. So if you've already got a theme, you can only have one active theme at a time. So you should be able to do this within your theme that you already have configured if you've already got one. Otherwise, you just need to do what we did there. So that's our theme set up, but it won't actually do anything because we've got no content within our theme folder. So the visual theme system allows us to override any of the views used by BookStack. When BookStack does an export, it uses some specific views. And if we have a look in our resources views folder, and this is getting into the BookStack files itself, we don't want to edit these. We'll just take a look. And then within here, there's layouts, which are all the core layouts used for the views that are returned by BookStack. And one of these is export. So this is the base HTML that's used by any export within the system, at least ones that use a HTML-based format, which PDF exports do. Within here, we can see this includes other template files. Here is the one that we want to target specifically. So we've got layouts.parts.export body start, and the same thing but export body end. So this is content that's included at the very start of the body content of exports and at the very end of body content of exports. So we can use those to our advantage to place a header and a footer. So if we take a look at those files, so we can find those by following the path layouts, parts, and export body start. So view layouts, parts, export body start and end. We have a look at these. They currently just have placeholder comments. Same with the start and end. And these are pretty much here exactly for the purpose that we're going to use them for, using with a visual theme system for customization. So these are the views that we want to override. So to override those, we'll need to create a similar directory structure within our theme folder. Going back to the export, these are in layouts.parts and then the name of the template itself. So if we go to our theme folder, which is this themes custom, within here we'll create a layouts, and then within that layouts folder we'll create a parts folder, and that is the directory matched. And now we'll start off with just a header. We'll find export body start. We'll copy that and we'll paste that into our theme folder. And now this version within our theme folder should override that file when it actually uses it. So we can test this out. Let's say, put a bit of text in here. So we'll remove that comment and put in, does this work? We'll save that. And now if we go over to our live instance and export this page again as a PDF, we can now see we've got an extra bit of text there. Does this work? And that's only on that first page, because that's just as if that content was placed in at the top of that file where we saw it within that base template. And so that looks like it's working pretty nicely, where our theme system is now active and we can control some content within there. So the next step is to add our header content. I'll remove that does this work, and I'm going to paste in something that I've created earlier, just because there's quite a bit to it and I don't want to spend all day getting back to the same point. This is the content that can get us a header, and I'll quickly run through this. So we've got the styles up here and then the HTML content in here. This is all wrapped within a big if statement, which is checking that the format is PDF. Because that export template can be used by also like HTML exports, we want to just double check that the format is PDF before we use this, because a lot of the kind of export page printing specific styles that we're going to use, the support across different like browsers and different things that support HTML and CSS is actually quite varied, at least at the moment. So we want to make sure we're targeting just PDF exports. So within our content, everything's wrapped within this print header footer class, which is, if we look at the CSS for that up here, is setting a position of fixed and width to 100%. So by fixing the position, it's gonna, set it to a specific point within the page. But by fixing it as well, because it's in like a page printing format, what we'll get from that is that it's going to repeat this section on every single page that gets created in that format. And then we're setting a top position on the element itself of -80. So we're setting a top of -80, which actually pushes it upwards and essentially pushes it into the margin space that will be part of the page. And that margin space we're defining here. We say a margin top of 120, and we've got a bit of margin bottom as well for when we do the footer. So we're creating that space and then pushing the header into it. Then we've got an inner section here, which has the styles of, it just has a max width on it with a bit of a margin 0 or 2 to center it, and a color of #666 just to give that faded sort of text look to the header content, so it doesn't have the same kind of boldness as the main content itself. And then here, this isn't used yet, but we'll use in a second, is a print page number. So this is how we can get our numbering system for a current page. So page 1, page 2, page 3, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, you can't do, at least very easily, like page 1 of X, so 1 of 10, 1 of 20, things like that. It is kind of possible, but it's not easily doable, at least to the same level as we're doing here. Just because when the PDF renderer is going through things, it doesn't have context of exactly how many pages it's going to be, because it's drawing things out as it's going through the content. Unfortunately, we can't do the full page 1 of 5 or whatever, but we can show what page we're currently on. Then within here, I've got a couple of sections, just one with a float left and one with a float right, and a section here just to clear the floats. We won't put anything in here, but this can essentially be content we want on the left of our header and the content that we want on the right of the header. So within here, why don't we put in that page number, which we can do just by using an element with that class that we had above. So that's print page number. And we don't need to put any content in here because the CSS will do the work for us, because that will do page whatever. If we want to edit the text, we will edit it there, but that should do well for us. And then let's put in sort of like a company name, BookStack Productions Limited, not a real company. So we should see BookStack Productions Limited in the left of the header, and then page numbering on the right hand side. So let's give that a test. All right, BookStack Productions Limited, and then page 1. Let's double check page 2. There we go. That looks like it's working nicely, and then again our headers repeating on each page. So that's looking good, but one thing I've noticed, we've got a massive amount of space. So how can we reduce that? We jump back to here. The margin is defined as per this element here. So we're saying margin top 120. Let's reduce that down to 80, and we'll give that a test. Okay, so we do have less margin now, but the problem is that our headers kind of moved with that reduction, and now that's really uncomfortably close to the edge of the page. So whenever we change one of these, we'll also need to change the offset of the header or footer itself. So this was minus 80, pushing it 80 pixels essentially up into the header. So now let's reduce that down by 40, since we changed the margin top by 40. We'll give that a test. And that's looking good. And yeah, I think that looks quite neat. Yep, that's not touching the content at all. There's plenty of space, and it gives a little bit of separation, and this is no longer uncomfortably close to the page edge itself. And the page is still counting up correctly. So with our header working correctly, let's get our footer working as well. So we can do this by extending what we've done so far and copying how we define the header. So if we come down here, so this is still within the export body start. You might think to use the export body end template, but they'll actually cause more problems in terms of what page that starts on. You might find that it would then start on like page 2 and then only continue from that point because of the way these the printing works with positioning with HTML. So we're going to copy out the header content and we'll paste it just below. And then the most important thing that we need to change is this style top. We'll change that to bottom to essentially say affix this to the bottom of the page. So again, we'll do it by the same amount, minus 40. And now let's change a bit of text so we can know this is working. So we'll do BookStack. Oh no, we'll do copyright 2022. And we'll keep the page number in there to test if that's working. Let's jump back to the browser. Go to our page and export. So we've still got our header. And we've got a footer. Copyright 2022, and then our page counter, which is correct because that's page 1. Double check that for the second one. Yep, the footer's there, and again, page 2. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now, of course, you could change this content to whatever you want to be, any bit of static text, or you could get more advanced and then pull things from the system. A common thing that many may want to do is to add in a logo. Now, this is a bit more complex to achieve, but it is possible, and we'll go through that process now. So we'll put a logo within the header, and we'll put it on the left-hand side instead of the name that we had in there. So let's start with an image tag to say that we want an image. And I'll get rid of the alt text because it's not so much needed for a PDF. And then we need to define the source to the image. So technically we could pull that from the configured application logo, but I'm not going to go through that approach because one, it's a little bit complex to actually find that file and bring it into this. And then two, it probably is not suitable because the application logo usually sits in the header bar of BookStack. So if we double check, it sits like here. So currently we've got this white logo here, for example, because it sits nice with the primary color that we configured, which is this blue. And that doesn't work well so much for these exports, which are on a white background. We probably want something specific that works better for this. So we'll use a separate custom logo for this system. So what I've done, I've got a logo pre-prepared, and I'll just grab that file. And then I'm going to copy that into my BookStack application file. So again, I'm in the same place that I am in on VS Code here. I'm going to go into my themes folder. So there's a custom theme folder. And just within the top space of here, I'll paste in my logo. And we'll just take a look at that. So you can see this is really old. This is like the original BookStack logo before I properly put it up and shared the project. And I've just called that logo.png. And again, that's in the root directory of my custom theme folder. And that's quite important. So back into VS Code, we'll bring that into this image tag. Now this is a little bit complex just because within the PDF exports, at least by default, it won't fetch external content for the interest of security. So we have to kind of embed this image inline, which we can do. It's just a bit unusual, but we can use a data URI. So at the start of here, we'll put in data, and then it's the content type. So it's image/PNG in this case. Might need to change that if you're using a different file format, but in most cases it's PNG. Then a semicolon, and then base 64, comma, and now we need to dynamically bring in the contents of that file. Or we could actually grab the contents of that file and build it in as a sort of statically put in the base 64 content of that in here. But I'm going to do things a bit more dynamically using a bit of BookStack magic. I'm going to put in these curly tags, which allows us to add in dynamic code. And then we're going to say base 64 encode. And that's going to be the content within the, we need to get some file contents, file get contents. And then BookStack has a helper to get a specific theme file, which is theme path. And then that takes in a relative path relative to the root part of your theme folder. So for our case, we could just put logo.png. Okay, bit complex, but basically we're resolving the theme path for the logo PNG file. We're getting the contents of that file. Then we're base 64 encoding that. So that's going to come out into this tag here, which is saying has some data that's a PNG in base 64 format. Bit complex, but once that's done, that's done. And then by doing it dynamically, we can always change that logo whenever we need to by just changing the file, and then it will be part of our exports. So let's give this a go. Hopefully I've spelled that all right. All right. Well, it looks like it's working, although it's very, very large. So large it's overlapping the text, which is understandable. So let's adjust that then. We'll go back to our code and we'll just pop on a height. Say height of 42. And we can always adjust that if it looks bad. We'll just use that as a baseline. All right, that's quite reasonable actually. Quite like that size. It's a little bit close to the content now, so I think we need a bit of adjustment there. Oh yeah, especially we look at that page 3 example where it's just the text, so it's got less margin. So let's tweak that. So again, we need to tweak both this top and this margin top, so we'll go back to our 120 and we need to adjust that further up. We'll go for the 80. Alrighty. We've probably gone too far now, haven't we? Alright, let's meet in the middle. So 20 off of there. 20 off of there. Alrighty. That is looking a lot more reasonable. Let's just do one stylistic addition. Because it's quite bold and quite distracting, it doesn't kind of fade into a header. We could add a little bit of opacity change to that. So we'll do that on here maybe. We'll go opacity, and let's just go to a 0.6. So 60% opacity. Just fade it out a bit. Not sure if this is going to work. Oh, no, that works quite nice. We'll just phase it into the background a little bit. I'll probably make that a little bit smaller still, but otherwise I think that does the job. But yeah, you could just then do whatever you need to do, add in where the bits of text you need to do, and just tweak things as you desire. That is the process of adding a custom header and footer into BookStack exports. I'll put in the content that we've achieved so far within a GitHub gist, and I'll link that in the description. Otherwise, good luck with setting up your own header and footer, And feel free to shout in the Discord chat for BookStack if you have any issues. Yeah, thank you very much and have a great day.